Do it.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and I apologize for the snafu. One of the things that is kind of funny about this going like this is that we have been planning this since October, but we did not realize that Teams Live would actually be better until literally 24 hours ago. So we have been learning Teams Live, and Carrie Shadler in particular, for 24 hours. So we apologize for any of the confusion. So thank you, Ian, for getting everyone over here. And thank you, everyone, for attending this important event. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Chris McDonald Dennis. I am the Chief Diversity Officer here at Mass College of Liberal Arts. Tomorrow, actually, 2 weeks from tomorrow, will be my third 3-year anniversary. And I love my work here. And I'm particularly excited about this panel because I really do believe that this is going to be a moment that we are going to be able to make some important changes. Thank you very much for telling me that there is echo in my audio. So where did this come from? This idea actually, and this title and the concept and the actual questions came from a summit that many of us attended in October. Some of you may know that we belong to an organization called Leading for Change. It is a consortium of private and public colleges in Massachusetts that are focused on racial equity and justice. It is housed out of Bridgewater State University, and this is our first year as a part of it. In October, or might have been early November, I apologize, I don't remember exactly the date. Those of us who are part of the racial equity team attended the summit, and there was a panel called Listening and Acting on the Voices of Our ALANA and Other Students of Color. And there were 4 panelists. There were 4 students who were one was from Bristol Community College, one was from Bridgewater State University, one student was from Greenfield Community College, and one student from Mount Holyoke College. And those of us who were part of the team instantly were texting each other and emailing saying, we need to bring this to campus. Because the questions were powerful, the stories were powerful, the students were able to talk about ways that institutions inadvertently set up barriers to students of color, ways that we could do better, and things that they wished that they had known. And it really, we said, we need this. And particularly, I think, because when I first arrived to campus, I had on my desk a series of surveys and research that mirrored the data sheet that many of you received from Jason Canales, showing that there was a difference in experience and feeling between ALANA students and white students. That has been consistent since before I got here. So when you all received that, if you're wondering, is this representative of the campus? It is representative. Jason and I were not surprised. We have seen this in most surveys that we have seen. But one of the challenges has always been, how do we make this real to people? How do we make this an impetus to act? And how do we help all of us be different? Because one of the things that I know about our campus is that we care deeply about students. We want all of our students to thrive. We work hard. We want our students of color to thrive. And yet we also know that racism exists. Those two things go hand in hand. And it is not surprising to me that we as an institution are struggling in this area. The truth of the matter is, it has been relatively recently that we have become such a racially diverse community. Many of you know that I was a Massachusetts Public College graduate. I went to Framingham State University. And I knew I was going to go to Massachusetts Public College. And I remember when I was looking at all of the Massachusetts public colleges, North Adams State was not a place that people of color said, oh, let's go down Route 2 and, go to Vermont. And so that has been recent that we have become so racially diverse. And now we're 26% students of color. So of course we're struggling. That should not surprise us. It should be, it's kind of, we've been growing pretty fast in terms of racial diversity. It's also incumbent for us to do that because if you look at the demographics of Massachusetts, the growing populations are populations of color. My folks, Black folks, Asian folks, we are the communities that are growing. White communities aren't growing as much. So if we are to grow, we will continue to get racially diverse. So this is about us really growing as a community, being the best that we can be. So I am just excited for this work. I do want to tell you what we are going to be doing after this. So this is the beginning of conversations that we will have with all of you, with departments and offices, to talk about, okay, so we have this data, we have these student voices, now what? How can your department, how can your office, how can you personally do something different to get rid of these barriers? Can make things different for students of color. This isn't about blame. This is about how do we work smarter? We know we work hard, but how do we work smarter? How do we become culturally competent? How do we really work to make sure that this community is equitable and inclusive for all students? I'd like to introduce now the panel, the moderator for the panel, Arlene Theodore, who runs our Multicultural Education Resource Center, and she will introduce our students. So, Arlene.
I think we have her on mute. She needs to unmute.
Does everyone hear me now? Okay, I apologize. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Arlene Theodore. I go by she, her, and hers. I'm the Associate Director of Diversity Programs, and I also oversee the Multicultural Education Resource Center here on campus. In my role, I serve as a direct support to students of color, and I program around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we are going to dive right into the questions. So my first question for the student panelists is, please introduce yourself by providing me with your name, the city you're from, your major, and how you identify racially and ethnically. Alex.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I live in Springfield, Massachusetts. I'm a senior here at MCLA. I am Puerto Rican. I go by he, him, and his. And my dream job would have to be an FBI SWAT team, but after I go into the military police. So yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brianna Christie. I am from Wells, Maine. I am a double major in English and communication. I identify as a Black woman, but my ethnicity is Jamaican, And on campus, I am the president of Black Student Union.
Hi, y'all. My name is Hua Zhang, ethnically pronounced Hua Zhang. I am from Fresno, California. I go by she, her, hers. I identify as a Hmong Southeast Asian American. I am majoring in political science and minoring in American ethnic studies and cross-cultural and social justice. On campus, I participate in the Asian Student Association, where I am the president of that club, as well as working with Arlene Theodore in the Multicultural Education Resource Center. And in North Adams, I'm also a part of the City of North Adams Diversity, Inclusion, Equity, and Accessing Working Group, along with being in the Women of Color Institute and Poli-Sci Club.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Eliza Gonzalez. I go by she, her, hers, and I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts. I am a double major in psychology and in health sciences with a double minor in public health and child family studies. I identify as a Latina woman, and my dream job is to be a neuropsychologist. My position here on campus, so I am the communications director for the Women of Color Initiative. I am the secretary of the Latin American Society, and I'm also the secretary of the school STEP team. And I also work in the Merck office.
Thank you so much. So my second question for you all is, what do you know now that you wish you knew on your first day of college? In answering, please consider who you are with all of your intersecting identities. Yes, Alex.
So something I wish I knew on my first day of college that I know now is the lack of culture and minority on campus. I was coming from a place where everyone liked me, was a person of color and had like mixed genes. So like transferring from like high school to like college was like a huge step for me, especially since this institution is in the middle of nowhere and is like a white dominant place. When I applied to this institution, I had like only knew like the people of color on campus because some of the students that came to this campus came from my high school. So like I kind of already like knew a little bit about it, but not a lot about it. So it was kind of they easily like helped me meet like great professors here and like staff on campus that are really like helpful, which helped me see that this school is like a good fit for me. When I visited the school, everyone was like nice and helpful, but the majority of the people that was there that day was a person of color. So I thought like this school was like a little more diverse than it is. So I wasn't like aware of the lack of minority and students, faculty, and staff on campus until my first day at this institution, and then that's when I seen it. I also wish that like I would have known the true struggles of minority this campus was actually having at the time, instead of being like lied to about it and about like how great the school is and the area it is around. I'd just like to be more aware of like how many people are actually coming to school that are minorities or like minority things outside of campus too. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Go ahead, Bree.
Yeah, for me, I'd say one thing that I wish I knew beforehand was how mental health affects the Black community. As a Black woman and an immigrant and also a first-generation college student, I didn't know that mental health was a thing in the Black community because my family never spoke about it. I never researched about it. And so when I got on campus, I didn't even know that there was counseling services, especially advertised to students of color. And when I had moments that I needed counseling for my mental health, another student of color recommended me the counseling services instead of administration or faculty.
Thank you. Go ahead, Hua.
Thank you, Arlene. I don't know if I mentioned in the first question where I'm from. I'm from Fresno, California, and a dream job is to work in the nonprofit organizations and serving communities all over the country. But answering this question, what I wish I knew was I wish I met my support system earlier in regards to whether they're faculty members or professors who work with culture and backgrounds and like view life in a sociological perspective as well, and professors who study anthropology in that sense, where I have they give me an understanding of what I'm studying when I'm studying political science. So folks on campus, the adults who are giving these supports and these dialogues with students of color and to give that support to them. I met Arlene through Coach Beckwith and I worked with her, but of course, Arlene is only one person to really help navigate this supporting students of color. So I wish I met this support system earlier of the year when they were introducing like folks from different departments to students, or especially me being a transfer student coming in. Adding on, I also learned now that I built walls of building my own refuge here at MCLA. Now I do understand that it is a predominantly white institution, but also realizing that when I came to MCLA to tour the school with the volleyball program, that the girls on the team, especially mostly the white folks on the team or the white folks in the department, really emphasized that this was a really safe campus to me. You know, that it's in the middle of nowhere. And I really believe that in coming here, realizing that, wow, like I may feel safe physically, but in that sense, mentally, emotionally, as a person of color, I don't think I feel safe in that way, that I have racial traumas in the classrooms, outside, in the volleyball program, in the athletic department that led me to quit the team this year and everything else, all of the above. That's what I know now. And I wish I knew that back then, that this is just because I'm in a white area doesn't mean that it's safe for a person of color.
Thank you so much for your vulnerability, Hua. Eliza, did you want to go? Okay. So moving on to the second question, well, to the third question, excuse me. Without realizing it, what are some things you believe MCLA unintentionally does that harms students of color? Alex?
So MCLA has a way of advertising that this campus is a diverse and a safe place. But when like people of color come here, they are disappointed in their decision that they had made. This harms like students of color because we're lied to about how diverse and safe it is on this campus, and not just on this campus, but outside of campus. When they come to this campus, people realize that this place isn't a safe and diverse place as they had hoped. These things make us lose who we are because it doesn't feel at home like an institution should. We shouldn't have to worry about walking down the street at night and having people harass us, or walking down in the middle of the day and having people throw food at us, because a place I call home shouldn't feel this way or shouldn't be this way. Also the way that like some professors and some staff talk about race or racism, they usually when race or racism is being taught on, it is usually viewed and taught from one side. So my advice is like try to look at it from all perspective when you're talking about this. You have to like view it and teach it from like both sides instead of just looking at it from one side. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Alex. Eliza? I believe you're muted.
Am I muted now?
No.
Okay. So I believe, so bouncing off of what Alex had said about the advertisement of saying that MCLA is very diverse, I feel like the lack of staff and faculty of color that we have on campus is also a way that, well, something that is impacting us. So we could take counseling services as an instance. Like one, I think counseling services should be more accessible for students, and more therapists or counselors are needed there, because like, you know, when it comes to booking an appointment, it's always booked. And at the moment we don't see a lot of people of color in counseling. And also when it comes to the topics of mental health, we're always talking about, we talk about a bunch of aspects, but I always hear about suicide and depression, but I do not hear enough about how oppression and discrimination and how it is impacting students of color on campus. But yeah, that's basically how I feel like we're being impacted without MCLA knowing.
Thank you very much. Kuba?
Thank you, Arlene. To answer this question, I say the food that's served in the cafeteria for students of color, whether their foods are ethnically named to be made for students of color, for example, they serve tacos or burritos, or they try to serve Asian food, I think just being mindful of the students of color who are eating this food, or that are coming to these cafeteria and eating this food, but it doesn't taste like the food from home. And we do understand that most of the time it's the white folks who are making this food, and we understand that it won't taste like the food from home. So that's where we become open-minded. But sometimes we just eat it because we need to eat and we're hungry. And most of us obviously don't have money like other folks to buy food every day, but it's a part of tuition. That's what we've paid to eat here. And sometimes disconnect with on campus, it just make us feel like we're not welcomed, not welcome, more of like we're not here, that the food they are serving, they don't see the students that they are serving as well. So I think it's important to also acknowledge that, make sure you know the students that are attending your school and being mindful of the food that you are serving, because they also need to survive, because we do get very hungry. And I do want to add one quick to add on to this too, that unintentionally harming students of color is sometimes tending to put students of color on the spot in the classrooms. And we're talking about like different countries that are like racial or ethnically that they may be correlated to, whether I'm Asian and I'm in the classroom and my white professor asked me who like, is that how you pronounce the Chinese word? Like, I'm not Chinese, sir. And that's only the second week of school, my first time in CLA, and I'm put on the spot like that. So it does trigger my racial traumas in that sense. And so I think just really important to be mindful of students and not assume, but also be willing to learn of the ethnic background if you are interested, because they will be willing to, you know, answer the questions. So having to put yourself in a space where listening to your students, but not assume that they are what you are teaching, because they might not know everything.
Thank you, Huba. Eliza?
Again, bouncing off of what Hua was saying, like I noticed that there's like a lot of microaggressions on campus. So there's one, and the college experience for a student is like a big part of it is self-discovery. So I feel like walking into campus with this big culture shock, it's hard for me to find myself and like go the direction or the path that I want to go to, when there's another part of me that I feel like I'm kind of losing now that I'm here on campus. Don't know if that makes any sense or not, but it's kind of how I feel.
Thank you. Did anyone else want to elaborate on that or answer? Okay, Bree.
I'd say another example that comes to mind would be policing on campus. Obviously, policing is important, and you know, it keeps the campus safe, but I feel like when it comes to students of color, it can become intimidating. For me, personally, I know that I have nothing to hide, like I'm a good person, but once campus police is around me, I get tense, I get scared. And it's not only the fact that, you know, in recent times we've had, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement about police brutality, but the fact that campus police are walking around armed, and we never know, you know, what could happen and the intentions behind it. So I feel like that is just something that is behind a lot of students of color's minds about campus police.
Thank you, Bree. I'm going to move on to the next question. Is that okay with everyone? Awesome. Okay, so I'm sorry, Bree, you're still live. Okay, so the fourth question is, what are some things you want departments, administrators, faculty, and staff to do to support students of color? Please consider academics, student life, campus climate, and anything else you would like to share. Alex?
Oh, okay. So some things that I think that they can do is like, first of all, hire more faculty and staff of color. Show students that you're trying to be diverse, not just say that you want to be diverse and have like one person of color and then like everybody else is not, you know what I mean? Ask the students what they think the school lacks, you know, get some feedback from the students. Look over and try to fix things that the students say that need fixing. Another major thing is like more funding used for better food on campus. And outside of campus, MCLA should be trying to like bring diverse foods on campus so that it feels like a diverse place. You can't call yourself that you're diverse if you don't really have diverse food or even in your area. A lot of students leave the school because of the lack of diverse food on campus and outside of campus. So I think that we should try to fix that some way or another way. So I know that I'm in the person of men of color, and we were talking about ways that we can bring stuff to here on campus and stuff. So, you know, that's like another way, just interacting with other people or anything, people of color, and seeing what they actually want, and students on campus as well. Also, like another major thing is communication with staff and students is key into changing this campus. So yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Bree?
I'd say another thing is for faculty and staff to understand that students of color are educated. They're here to be educated, and that you might know if you don't know if you might have microaggressions or already preconceived notions of students of color. Just so in that sense, just understand that like we're all here to learn. Like there isn't a difference from white students to students of color. So just have that kind of knowledge that we want to be educated and we are educated.
Thank you, Bree. Huba?
Thank you, Arlene. To answer this question, if you have a student who is passionate about racial work, racial injustice, or social work, or working with vulnerable and marginalized groups, and you know they've projected in your eye, in the classrooms, in the papers they write, that they're passionate about this kind of work, that they want to go into this work, be willing to help them. Like if you know internships or job opportunities or different like things that will help them grow as a student, be willing to share that resource with them and be able to have those comfortable conversations with them, even if it may be uncomfortable for you, if you're a person of, if you're a white professor, or if you're just not of their ethnic or racial backgrounds. Like be willing to be like, hey, Hua, I can tell that you do a lot of diversity work on campus. I see this job that you might be interested in, or you want to look into it. I think it's a great networking access for students as well. If they see the professors engaging with them professionally as well, knowing that, oh, so you notice me as I'm doing my work outside the classroom, that I'm very passionate about this. So I think that's really important of being able to be comfortable with and talking about their careers and stuff. If they want to go into racial work, knowing that you are like a white professor, and they will be willing to have the conversation with you, because one, they will know that you care about them, and two, that you care about this work, and you know that they have the passion and heart, and they can achieve that goal, or serving communities as well. Because just one thing, I think just being a poli-sci student, I often find myself I'm not participating a lot in classes, or participating like this. I know what I'm talking about, like knowing the materials, but I read, I process things slowly. But the challenge about being a person of color in a poli-sci department since the first day of community college till this day, my last semester is I'm always constantly unlearning a lot of things in community, in our society, while learning new stuff. So that balance of learning and unlearning at the same time in the classrooms, most of the time it's me processing like what's going on and also reflecting on my life as a person of color in this country.
Thank you, Hua. That was extremely powerful. Does anyone else want to elaborate on that or answer that question? Eliza?
Just adding on to what Hua was saying, yeah, I want to have more of these conversations in the classroom environment and not shy away from these big conversations, because I realize that when I am in a classroom environment, we'll talk about race and then it will suddenly be brushed off quickly, and it's not something that everybody is open and willing to talk about. So I feel like trying to get more of these conversations inside the class and say, well, depending on what the class is, of course, but saying asking these questions, asking more questions, and trying to educate other people rather than leaving the students of color to educate other people. Let's try to educate ourselves and, do it yourself. Do not rely on another person to tell you that you're doing something wrong. Maybe look and reflect upon yourself and see what you're doing wrong, rather than, hey, is this okay for me to say? Is this okay for me to do? No. We want effort. We want to see effort. And I feel like effort is not something that I am seeing.
Thank you, Eliza. I'm going to move on to the last and final question. Is everyone all set with that? Okay. Okay, so, am I live? Okay, so question number 5 is, what is the single most important advice you have for the MCLA employees listening about what they can do to create the MCLA that students of color deserve? Alex?
So my advice would be to be willing to learn, to understand, to listen, and to change. Like the learning be willing to learn, meaning like in the aspect of learning your biases. Meaning like if a person of color walks by you, whatever, your bias is to look back to make sure like nothing happens, or if you're a girl and you're walking down and a person of color walks you and you just clench your purse, like little things like that. Like be willing to learn those biases and wanting to change it. Another aspect of like the learning is like be willing to learn what you can do to help. Educate yourself, like Eliza and everybody was saying. Be willing to educate yourself. Be wanting to do it. Because if you don't want to do it, then you're not really doing anything. Learn the history, about like Black lives and like the MCLA history. Be willing to learn about the culture and the diverse the school has and everything. Be willing to learn who you are and what role you have to play in all of this if you want to change. And the understanding process, understand the history and the horror and the damage that people of color have faced every single day. Understand that you have to change. That's one of the biggest ones. Understand that you have to change. Understand when you're wrong. You're not always gonna be right. I'm not always gonna be right. Nobody's ever gonna be right. Just be willing and wanting to know to like correct yourself when you're wrong. Understand that everyone is different. No one is the same. You know what I mean? Everyone is different in their own way. So no judging, no nothing. You know what I mean? Be able to listen to people's backgrounds, their stories. Like that's another way. Like if you hear what they go through every day in life or what they have been through, like it gets you like a closer connection with each other and everything. And that's like what happened to me. I found a professor and we connected and everything, and she just heard about everything that happened and we just became close. Be able to listen why they came here. Why did they come to the school? If they're like from like, let's say Puerto Rico, Dominican, Cuba, California, why are they here? Why did they choose to be here? why did they even pick the school? Be able to listen to kids' dream, to their goals. You know, that's like one of the biggest ones. And the last one is wanting to change. You have to want to change to change. You can't say, oh yeah, I'm gonna change and then not change. You have to want it. You have to want it and feel it. So yeah, that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Alex. Bree?
Yeah, just adding on to what Alex was saying, definitely everyone can learn new things. I'm growing, I'm learning as well as a Black woman, but also I feel like just providing more support for, oh my gosh, sorry, diverse clubs on campus, you know, like when we look at the attendance, you know, it's lacking compared to other clubs that have predominantly like white members. So I feel like, you know, these clubs are essential, they're important for, you know, the students of color on campus. And there's not many of us running it or, you know, being involved in it. So these clubs are like the foundation of, you know, students of color staying here if they have a sense of community. And if, you know, the support isn't there, then there's not going to be many of us here.
Thank you, Bree. Anyone else? Eliza?
Pretty much all I have to say is just be mindful. Mindfulness is just the biggest takeaway of this. Like, be mindful of what you're saying, be mindful of what you're doing. Look at the environment around you. I know that there's a lot of students of color who are quiet in the classroom environment. So maybe like seeing what's going on or something. I don't know. Whatever scenario it is, I just know that support is needed and there is more mindfulness needed.
Thank you. Hua?
Thank you, Arlene. You see, this question is asking for the single most important advice. That means that I had to rank how I want to be treated as a person, like having to put in a rank and having to say single most important. What is single most important advice of how you want to be treated as a human being? And with this approach, I guess it's coming to the faculty of folks who work at MCLA is allowing yourselves, and I think specifically just if I'm just talking about professors doing this in the classrooms, allow yourself to see colors rather than just from coming to life, seeing life in a colorblind perspective that you don't see colors, like, oh, I treat all my students the same, I don't see colors. Then the reality is, the sad truth is, your Asian student is different from your white student, and it's different cultures and backgrounds. So you have to allow yourself to see the colors in your classroom in order for the society, for us as people to even progress in this world, to acknowledge the differences that we have in our classrooms and our students. And when we're looking at these Black students on campus, different backgrounds, different origin of countries where they're all coming from, different, but because of this umbrella term, people of color, most of the time, we all just kind of put under this umbrella that we are people of color and we're the same, that we go through the same oppression. That's always, at the end of the day, people of color always have this oppression Olympics with each other because the white folks don't understand us, but yet people of color always fighting with each other because the white folks not understanding us, but there's the challenge there. So allow yourselves to see the colors in the classrooms and take note of that and allow yourself to also feel uncomfortable with your unconscious bias that you all of a sudden consciously notice, like, wow, I didn't realize that's what I felt. I had to sit down, dwell on it, be uncomfortable with it, but you know what? I'm going to learn and educate myself, because being the leaders that y'all are on MCLA, at MCLA, y'all are gifted with this passion and with this ability to lead in our community for the youth and our folks in our generation, to educate our folks. And so this is the world that y'all want to create for us. And so we look up to y'all, and when we see a professor and we look at you, you know, that kind of role model that I want to be. I'm going to be very selective in my hearing in your classes. So just be mindful of yourself as a leader. And at the end of the day, I just want to end it off. I am somebody's child. I am somebody's family, sister, auntie, niece, as well as my peers. And if you are married, you are somebody's mom, somebody's dad, grandparents, you're somebody's child as well. We all have families, and at the end of the day, you can't treat me good, I will have my family to go home to. But because you didn't treat me good, it's unfortunate, you won't get to meet my family. And it's just the connections, the community is just it sucks, I had to say. But be willing to just be respectful that at the end of the day, we have families, we have people we love and care about, and that's what we gotta do, is spread some more love, kindness, peace, and unity to everyone. Thank you. That's all I had to say for now.
Thank you, Hua. Does anyone have anything else to add or to elaborate for the final question? No, it seems that Hua definitely took that one away. You all can't see all the reactions I'm getting on my end, but they definitely loved Hua's response. Okay, well, that concludes the first portion of our program, but I would definitely want to give a huge thank you to the students who were vulnerable, who were authentic, who were powerful. There were so many things that were being said, and I will echo a lot of what they said, especially Hua said something extremely powerful. It's okay to see colors, right? Every single identity has a different struggle. They go through different barriers, and that's the reality of being Black or being brown, right? Being Latinx, being Indian, being Asian, and so on. So I thought that was extremely, extremely powerful. And listening, not listening to respond, but actually listening, and then having the willingness to change. What Alex said too definitely resonated with me, because a lot of times when we get into these conversations and we speak about white fragility, right, a lot of people are uncomfortable, but discomfort brings so much growth. And that's definitely one thing that I definitely want you all to kind of take away from this panel. And I challenge you all to sit there and to process with the information that these folks shared, and understanding how much courage it took to literally be on a call with over 150 attendees who are literally your administration, right? So thank you so much to my students. I'm extremely proud of you all. These are conversations that we're having consistently in my office, that we're having organically. So it really took a lot to be able to, I guess, share that moment with you all. So again, huge thank you all. I'm going to transition into the question and answer portion of this, and I'm going to put Chris on the screen. Okay, that's all I said. Okay, thank you. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank the students again. You were amazing, your bravery, because as Arlene said, the people listening have power over your lives, and you spoke truth to power. And I am hopeful that my colleagues, and I'm going to say that I trust that my colleagues who are listening and who are watching right now are going to say, how can we change? And I think that the important piece that I kept hearing from the students, and certainly faculty and staff of color will say, it's really about self-awareness, looking at your own biases because they come out, because you do see color, because you do treat people differently, we do. And when you don't see it, it's actually more powerful than something that you don't even realize is controlling you and you don't even know. One of the things that often I always say to people is the discomfort when people will talk about what Arlene was saying, white fragility, and white folks will say to me like, oh, I don't want to be uncomfortable. And I said, well, we as people of color have been uncomfortable for a long time. So guess what? The discomfort is going to be equal now. We're all going to be uncomfortable, because that's the only way that we can change, is that we need to start naming things that happen and to start say, how do we really treat each other? How do we make sure that this campus really is there for all people? How do we make sure that students have access to the things from their home communities. Maybe they're not down the street, but that may mean that we need to help them access them elsewhere. What we would like to do now is to do the question and answer period, that if you have questions for the students, please type them in the chat, and then I will ask the students if it's a specific one to a student, or if it's just, I'll ask if you have a question just in general, and I'll ask if a student feels so inclined to answer. So please feel free to ask any questions that you might. I do want to remind you that that after this, while people are writing questions in the chat, I do want to remind you that from this panel, the Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion will be following up with departments to have conversations about what we heard today, about what the data shows, and what we might be able to do. How do we be honest with students around what MCLA is? You know, how do we, I mean, because obviously we're not going to change where North Adams is, but there are ways that we can connect people. So the first question is actually for Alex. Could Alex elaborate on how to better communicate between faculty, staff, and students? And I will.
So that's a good question. I would say a way that you can elaborate is if like you see like students around campus, just be willing to like say hi, how you doing, like where you're from, you know, like get to know them every single day. Like I'll give an example. It's like the people at the CAF that feed us food. You know, sometimes they interact with us and they tell us, how's your day going? You know, like, how you doing or whatever, you know, stuff like that. That's how you build relationships and stuff like that. I've been here for 4 years, so like it's always been the same people just asking me how you doing and stuff. So I just do it back and we just build like a connection. So that's like a way of just like talk to people, you know, be willing to talk, and you know, that's it, you know.
Thank you. The next question is, what resources would you like to see on campus that would support ALANA students? Okay, who?
Thank you, Chris. You know, I work in the Multicultural Education Resource Center with Arlene for the past 2 years now, and we've always struggled with the space that we have for students of color, that we don't see a lot of students of color go up to that area because, to be transparent, as a chancellor student, you know, not being here as long as my other folks here, I at least spent a year and a half here. You know, someone from the outside coming in, someone coming from a diverse city, someone who could have gone to UC Davis, who has, you know, do better with diversity stuff, that I look at this and I think they're struggling in that sense. They don't have the resources for students, and I came here because I came to MCLA because I knew that they didn't have a lot of resources, but I also wanted to learn and have that hands-on experience on how to be a better leader as well in a person. And so we don't have a lot of resources. Just Arlene and Chris can only do so much to help the diversity programs on campus, to help students of color, ALANA folks. We can only do so much to support these students. And me, myself as a student, can only do so much to support these students, because sometimes we are tired, that emotional labor, we don't have any more ideas because we just want to rest. And like we just want somebody to take over and hold our hand while we sleep or drive, while we sit on the passenger seat, like just take the wheels for a day so we can rest. And so I think that's really important that folks are mindful and understand that we have centers on campus who support ALANA folks, but because the institution don't support financially as well, or funding enough money for us to attract students of color and attract white folks coming in to see, or peek into the room like, hi Arlene, what's going on with students of color? What are y'all doing? Not enough of that on the third floor of the campus center, and I think that's very unfortunate, being like Arlene's office assistant for the past 2 years in the center, that the lack of culture here as well, and people just not being willing to learn about other cultures and be willing. So that resource that we don't have in the sense of money, and also networking connection, that North Adams, if we want to really improve the diversity work, we have to connect with different organizations outside of North Adams or in cities that are doing this kind of work on a very heavy load, and connect those and get those connections into North Adams to improve this little small city. Like if we're looking at Los Angeles and New York, in California, or like down south where they're doing a lot of diversity work, get those connections here to North Adams, to MCLA, so we can spread, so they can give us their knowledge and the resources they have, so we can give it to our students here on campus.
Great. Thank you very much. Someone asked, other institutions have campus-wide policies about the use of marginalizing language in the classroom, as well as campus-wide policies guidelines about respecting preferred pronouns. Is that a desire of students on this campus? Alex?
So I would say yes, but no at the same time. Like, we're all adults, so we all should know how to respect each other's, because the same way you respect others, you should respect yourself. So you should have that courtesy of not disrespecting anybody in the classroom or outside of the classroom. But yes, in some of the cases that like some people don't want to do that and they're actually not an adult about it. So I would say yes and no at the same time. I feel like people should already know, but we should push towards that, so that those people that don't want to do it and stuff like that, they have to, or else skedaddle. You feel me?
I like that, skedaddle. I do. Okay, who had something? So let me send who here. So.
Yes, thank you, Chris. I just want to add this really fast as well. Folks of color, especially students of color who identify with the LGBTQI plus community, who take these pronouns even more on a severe level, especially if they're going through a process of changing their identity with the pronouns. It's definitely important to just be willing to, if you call them with a pronoun that they don't identify with anymore, be willing to just correct a mistake, and that is okay, and we're in the process of learning as well as individuals.
Right. The next question is it more important for faculty to create diverse course materials, or to join sponsored diversity-oriented extracurricular activities clubs? Okay, Bree. Let me see. Yep, okay, Bree, you're there.
I think both is important. I feel like a lot of times course descriptions, when people are picking classes, don't give enough information about what we're learning. So I feel like starting there, could be more diverse, to have more students of color take those classes. In response to clubs and extracurricular activities, I think it's definitely important for faculty and staff to be there, especially faculty and staff who are not people of color, because for me, like my experience with BSU, a lot of people are like, BSU is just for Black students, it's just for students of color on campus. But I feel like if there was more white faculty and staff, in those meetings, in those conversations, then more white students are more willing to learn and change maybe their implicit biases or their microaggressions. So.
Sorry about that. This is a whole bunch of stuff. Anyone else want to answer that? Okay, question. What specific classroom practices make you feel welcome and included?
Can you repeat that?
What specific classroom practices make you feel welcome and included? And Eliza has something to say.
I think specifically a lot like what Alex is saying is just trying to get to know your students. So when it comes to like icebreaker periods or stuff like, or things like that, maybe asking about the student's background. Because I know personally when I'm asked about, oh, where are you from? Or where's your family from? Or da-da-da, like you're kind of asking me like, you know, a bit about myself, and you get more of an insight of who your student is. Because for me personally, when I came to MCLA specifically because it is a small school and I would build a connection with my professors, but that still has yet to happen. I have not built a connection with my professors, maybe with a handful of them, but the handful that I have made a connection with is my professors who are of color, which is a obvious issue, of course. So yes, I feel like just trying to get to know the other person's background and stuff like that. Like I know there's a lot of times where I'll be sitting in a classroom environment and I'll know like A, B, C, D, everything about my professor, like, you know, their background and stuff like that. Let's open up the environment and just include more dialogue into our classes and make it more of a welcoming atmosphere, if that makes sense.
Yep. Oh, okay. Okay.
To go with that, like I know that like I'm like an open type of person, so like I put myself in like the professor's shoes. Obviously they're also gonna be like nervous or anything like that to get to know other students, but like I'm like an open person, so like for me, like when I went into like my first classroom or whatever, I was just like, hey, how you doing? My name is Alex. I introduced myself, you know, just like to talk or whatever. And then like some professors, like when they do that, they just be like, hi, how you doing? Whatever, we're about to begin class or whatever. But like after class, only certain amount of professors be like, yo, you want to stay after class? Like whatever. And like they actually want to interact with me and stuff like that. So that's how you build like a connection. Like if you actually, someone asks you, how's your day or where you from or whatever, that means they want to get to know you or build a connection with you, you know what I mean? So like if the staff would do that to a student, they're like, oh, it's nice. So they actually care. I also came here because it's a small school. I'm not a type of person that's gonna have 500 students in the classroom and I'm gonna learn. No, I want that. I have that 1v1 with a professor if I need it, or like with a student. I know who everybody's in the class and the professor. So I've only been able to like build connections with like professors that actually want to build a connection. If that makes sense. And so there's a lot out of all the professors. There's only a majority that actually care to do it. So yeah.
Eliza.
I didn't know I was live, but anyways, yes. I also just wanted to simply bring up like certain scenarios where I would be in a class and I would honestly feel very uncomfortable because there would be moments where professors, they would have A-B conversations with certain students, and then like there's me there just like, you know, listening in, and it's kind of awkward, like, you know, having those separate conversations and ha 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 in the corner of the classroom while we're not even just learning. So there's those moments. I feel like those moments should just
So this is actually a really good one. I appreciate this question. What conversations about race would you want to know were happening in classes where all the students are white? Like, what is one thing you would have wanted every single one of your white fellow students to have read or watched or talked about? And I like that because so often when we talk about race is only brought up when we are in the room because white folks think that they are raceless. And we know that white folks are a race. So I really like that. What conversations about race do you want in the classroom or outside the classroom with only white folks?
I'd say an example that comes to mind is probably like policing and police brutality, because it's evident that students of color already know this and know how it affects their lives. But in a sense, white students probably don't get you know, the reason for Black Lives Matter movement or, you know, things relating to that, because, you know, they're not targeted, they're not oppressed in that way. So I feel like definitely, you know, that conversation on police.
Oh. Anyone else? Oh, cool. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. You know, looking at this question.
Wait a sec. Okay, who now? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chris. I think looking at this question, I perceive in this way where the only white folks. I see this question wording in the frame where what do I want my white folks to know, like especially my white students. So we studying history, and you look at these different wars in the United States that we are studying, and you know we look at the Civil War, and we look at the war down south in the Texas area that also affects a lot of Hispanic, Latino folks of that area, and just looking at war, how yes. It was a war for land or territory and all that sense too, but it affects people of color in that sense in the process of fighting for those land and the generational trauma of our history of how it affected people of color. So also just be willing to see, yes, politically, economically, and all that stuff, but when we look at people-wise, how has it affected them? Like this war happened in Laos of the Americans coming in, affecting my people, their peace, their harmony, and my families are refugees in that sense of ending up in refugee camps in the US. How has that war affected my people? The Vietnam War, how's that affected my people? So understanding that your neighbors, your classmates, that there are actual wars that have affected your peers. So be willing to learn how wars, one of the most destructive thing that can happen in our world with people against people like that, how it can affect people. So be willing to learn the results and the consequences that exist in our communities today.
Right. Oh, let me see, Alex. Okay. Oh. There you go, Alex. Oh.
I don't know why it keeps muting me. I don't understand.
You're cool now.
Oh, okay. So I just kept reading over the question, and I was just, can you repeat the question like one more time, like the last part of it?
It is, what would you want white folks to, you wanted, like, what is one thing you would have wanted every single one of your white fellow students to have read or watched or talked about?
Okay, so like now we're talking about like now, I would like it for like those students to like just read what happened on today, because every single day something always happens to a person of color. Every single day there's always a news story, a headline, oh, someone got murdered, this person of color did this person of color got police brutality, you know, like everything that happened. Like people did not march for this Black Lives Matter and everything for no reason. Like be mindful and like wanting to learn about that. What happened? Why did they march? Why did they do this? Like those little type of things, just before you come to class or anything, just like maybe like read something that happened today of a person of color, because every single day there's always something new.
Right. I would add, this might be a little controversial, but people know that I will walk in it, is that given what we're going through right now, tomorrow will be a month that an insurrection happened at the Capitol. If that was not about white racial identity, I don't know what was. So like white people need to talk about that, because that was your cousins. You know, that like we are often labeled in the same thing, you know, so I think whiteness is actually under attack, because white folks, and I always joke, in 5 seconds are going to be a minority. And there are a lot of people who are afraid. So I actually think that white people really need to talk about, there's this fight in the white community about what kind of world do we want? Do we want a multiracial democracy that, let's remind us, we've had for 55 years? Or do we want to go back to what we had? A white authoritarian state. So that is something that white people need to talk about and need to take a stand and to say, where do I want to stand? So actually, I would actually argue that my white colleagues and students and stuff should be having those conversations without us to say, this is the type of white person I want to be. So one person asked, what are some ways that RPS can work to provide more or better support for students of color? Oh, Bree. There you go, Bree.
Yeah, I was eyeballing that question, and what instantly came to mind was when students of color, especially in like townhouses, you know, are playing loud music, or, you know, outside of, you know, the COVID pandemic, let's say like last year, when they're playing music, you know, there'd be noise complaints or like the police are called, and it's like, yes, we understand, you know, some townhouses aren't 21 plus, blah, 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 but you have to see that there is, you know, different in the way, you know, students of color residents are treated compared to white students. Because let's compare, you know, if a white student were playing loud music, you know, the RA might not care. But if, you know, it's a townhouse full of students of color, you know, their neighbors might have that microaggression of like, what are they doing? It's so loud. And then the RA, you know, is called. The RA is like, you got a noise complaint. It might go to the RD, or even like campus police is called. So I feel like just understanding, you know, we like to have fun. We like to, you know, listen to music just like you. And, you know, not all the time something bad is happening, or, you know, underage drinking is happening when, you know, there's loud music playing.
Right.
Oh. Also for like RPS, like if you get like a complaint, like if you, I know like there's rules here on campus that like you get like, let's say you have a noise complaint or whatever, like you have like a warning or something, like I think you get like someone comes up to your door instead of calling the police, you know, coming up to your door and telling you or something like that. I had a problem, I think last year or whatever, we were all like men of color in the building, and supposedly when I asked, like the cops that came in every building, like they came in through like the back and the front, there's police everywhere, and we're just like, what the heck? I know we were playing music loud and stuff, but then when I asked like, oh, like we didn't even get like a notice or anything like that, we're playing music loud, they're like, oh, you had like 6 of them. Where was my notice? Like I didn't get no notice. We didn't even know we had they were like, oh, you had a noise complaint like 3 weeks ago. Like, what are you talking about? We were not aware of this. So instead of like bringing in like a bunch of cops or anything like that, like for RPS, like just know whether or not like they've been aware that they're playing music loud or anything like that, and not just barge in with like a bunch of police officers. Because I take that personally. Like there's a lot of like us men of color, it was just everybody in there, and the reason why they said that we didn't get notices because people around us were scared. So that, like, to me, I was just like, that makes no sense. And there was like way too many cops just for a noise complaint. Like there was like way too many cops. There was like 3 in the back and 3 in the front. Like that was unnecessary for a noise complaint. And like, yeah, it was just ridiculous. Right. So yeah.
And Eliza has something to say, but I would remind people, if people say they were afraid, that is racist. I'm just going to say that. That is racist. If you see men of color and there is no reason, I just want to name that. I don't know those people, but that is like, you know, so how do we not, I think part of also our work as administrators and faculty and staff is, how do we also not enable the racism of other people? And Eliza had something to say. Oh, you did. Oh.
You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I was just saying that like this is just a small like little advice towards the RAs, mostly because I know they're a big role on this campus as well. So maybe when it comes to planning your future events, I know RAs get like an event a month or something like that. And I do understand that you have one-on-ones with your residents as well. Maybe correlating like an event that may distinguish something that goes with whatever resident you may have, like something that could go for all of your residents, if that makes sense. Like something, a diverse event, an educational event, like different events rather than sticking to the generic events that I'm always seeing on campus. So make, I don't know, like a Latin night or something. I don't know, but let's have fun.
Yeah. Exactly. Another question we have is, should MCLA have a specific required racial justice course? Okay, Eliza, yeah, immediately asked. Okay.
So this was like a thought that I even had before going into the student panel. I was just thinking, I think more courses when it comes to just learning about people of color, or like the course that Chris had just mentioned. I feel like, yes, it's needed. We should have a course on that at MCLA, and it should be mandatory. That's it.
Okay. So this is from as a faculty of color, other faculty call into question my legitimacy in leadership positions, especially in recent years. Can the students comment on how this same attitude is placed on them by white students and white faculty? And while it is anonymous, I want to thank that person for saying that, because that has happened to me as well. My competence has been questioned. Yes.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you to the individual who asked these questions. I actually would say that about 2 days ago, I had this conversation with a white student in my class, and we're both poli-sci majors. And I told him that, you know, after graduation, I don't want to go into the working field right then, you know, paying taxes, working full-time jobs. I want to go into public service in the sense that working in fellowship programs, serving communities. Even though if I'm receiving stipends, it's okay. I'm serving communities for a purpose. And I think that will also go into like programs like Peace Corps and working in different communities, different marginalized groups, vulnerable communities is important to me as a person of color, and how I grew up, my upbringings, and everything that shaped me into the person that I want to become. And this person, you know, questioned me of why, like, why do you want to do Peace Corps? It's not going to help you professionally. And, you know, me being the person I am was triggered at that moment. And I think to myself that you as a white student taking the same classes as me has the audacity to ask me how I'm going to gain professionalism by working with like underrepresented groups and marginalized groups in our communities and our world. And that made me question about the work that I do as a person, like, is what I'm doing not going to help me professionally? Because in order for me to be an effective, who knows, politician one day, or person who want to serve nonprofits, to serve vulnerable communities, I had to put myself in these communities to understand that while I'm in the classroom learning about how government works, about the economy, a day at a time, I'm also at the same time putting myself in these communities and working with them, understanding that there's a difference between working for them and working with them. So I want to work with folks, and that's what I want to do. Like, even though I'm not getting paid, I'm not getting paid all, like, you know, making money like other folks who might be after college. I'm serving, and, you know, I want to keep getting my education. And about 10, 20 years from now, I will be the person that I want to become. And it's a day at a time. I'm still very young. I'm still exploring. So you know, at the end of the day, is remembering what your passion is, who you are as a person, and why you serve people, and why you also serve yourself to feel human enough and worthy enough as a person.
Yeah, I feel like, to me, it's so ingrained in American society that people of color should not hold leadership roles, like, in general. And I feel like a lot of white people in America believe that, and believe that they, you know, they deserve the roles that they're in. And they love to compare themselves with people of color who are maybe in the same position as them. And I feel like that's why it's very important for MCLA to have more diverse staffing in leadership roles to show that, you know, people of color are qualified to do the same thing that white administrators or white faculty can do. And I think, you know, because there's more white administrators or white faculty, they overpower, you know, faculty of color in that sense that they, you know, have to be anonymous. You know, they can't, you know, speak what's on their mind. So I think that's a huge step that needs to be done.
Chris, you're muted.
Okay, I'll try this again. What would you say to a student of color who is struggling with finding their place at MCLA? Okay, Bree. There you go.
Yeah, I'll just say that although the population of diverse students is small, there is a population of us, and there are resources and, you know, clubs that are here for you. And for people who share the same experience, there's people who were once in your shoes that felt out of place or still feel out of place, and, you know, they're a senior here. So I feel like there are people and, you know, support for you to like voice your opinion and to feel like you have a little family or a little community here, you know, even if you're not home.
Wonderful. And okay, I think we have a few more questions. So there's one more. We'll do one more question. And actually, Arlene, you want to? Okay, Arlene.
Thank you. Chris, I'm sorry to jump on. However, there is 2 questions on here that I think would be extremely powerful for students to answer.
Okay.
Specifically one that has to do with admissions, because this is something that my students tell me literally all the time. So I would definitely love to hear what the students' advice would be, if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, so the question that I definitely loved was, what advice would you provide the admissions office to better recruit students of color to represent an accurate depiction of MCLA? Bree?
I feel like I'm talking too much, but I am an admissions assistant, so I work in the Office of Admissions, and I hear a lot of times that there's not accurate representation in like the pamphlets or like the videos they show, and I feel like, for me personally, I always feel like I'm kind of hidden in the, you know, realm of admissions. Like they mostly like advertise like the admissions ambassadors and stuff like that. So I feel like it would be really compelling to show that there are students of color in leadership roles on campus and not just, you know, admissions ambassadors or just students who walk around with backpacks, but show like what students of color are doing on campus, and that'll make an impact for students who are looking at schools to see that, hey, like I can, you know, change the way MCLA looks or do something important on campus, like, you know, the 4 of us are doing right now.
Thank you, Bree. Alex?
Some advice I would say is not to lie. Like obviously you want to tell them that we're not such a diverse place. Not saying that we're not, but like saying that there's not a lot of people of color, but we are trying to be diverse and we are trying to change the way that MCLA has been. Saying that you want to change, that you want them here, and that you want more adversity, and you want more people in power, and you want like just say things that you actually want. You know, like I know when I came here, I wanted to make a change. You know, I wanted to help. I was told professor and everything was like, oh, we should get more people of color. We should get more. You know, I'm always in different type of things, talking about things that we can do, and those are things that we can do. And starting in the admissions, just say, you know, we're trying to change. We're trying to do this. Although the past we have low numbers and like minorities and stuff like that. Well, no, we're trying to make a change. And you know, that to me, I would already come here. If you telling me that you're trying to make a change and whatever, I'm right there with you.
Thank you, Alex. 100%. The transparency. Anyone else? Okay, and the last question. Oh, Hua, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, Arlene, I'll make this quick as well. I think just updating the website on MCLA, including the depictions of like leaders on campus or faculty members, and how if I'm a student and I'm looking into MCLA, I'm looking at the website only. I don't see the school, I see the website, and what they're projecting on the website is like dry or plain, don't have a lot of information on the folks there as well, then I might not be interested, or it shows this, it doesn't have a transparent view of what MCLA is. And I feel like that's what I experienced with the MCLA website. So it's important to update the website and make it as diverse, inclusive for all different backgrounds and identities that actually exist on campus, the different talents and skills we have here with the student leaders and what they are doing to promote MCLA.
Thank you, Hua. So the last question that I have for you all, I definitely wanted to ask you all for your advice or your opinion, because going to predominantly white institution when I was an undergrad in grad school, I often felt myself in these situations, or in this situation specifically. And I know a lot of students of color on campus feel this way as well. So this is the reason why I had to ask it, because it was so powerful and so moving. How can professors be more sensitive or aware in classroom situations where we are teaching material on race and there is only one or a few students of color in the room? Do you have any advice about how we can be aware and acknowledging, but also not tokenizing or asking you to do some kind of extra labor in this situation? Good question, right? Very good question. Yeah. Go ahead, Bree.
I feel like it's so easy as, well, I'm not a professor, but I feel like because we're in small classrooms, you kind of get a sense of like who your students are, like their personalities. So if you see that like that one or few students of color are uncomfortable, you can see their body language, or if they're not like engaging or like looking up front, kind of like not like pressuring them to like be part of the discussion, because it could be like a traumatic, topic that they don't want to talk about or be included in. But I also feel like kind of like instead of relying on students of color, rely on the white students. They're also part of the class. Like engage them in the discussion instead of having that one or few students of color raising their hand and like adding to it. So definitely pick on the white students more to like have that conversation.
Thank you, Bree. Anyone else?
White people have a race. Sorry.
Go ahead, Eliza. You have nothing else to say? No? You're muted. Okay, never mind, that's okay. Okay, and who did you have something to say?
Yes, I'm just kind of processing as I go answering this question. To be more sensitive and aware is when you're teaching about race, especially know that your class is predominantly white, and if you are a white person as well, or you don't identify with whatever you're teaching, be aware and just be knowledgeable about what you're teaching as well. I think as a student of color, especially in my poli-sci classes, and we don't often talk about race, which I feel like it was just interesting for me to also be aware. I've become more aware of like a lot of things that when in my poli-sci classes, butchering my words, I realized that I don't learn a lot about race in that sense of like when I'm learning about behaviors, like we don't go into depth, and leading me to reading more literature and taking more American ethnic studies courses to intertwine both poli-sci classes is more than, for me to be an effective poli-sci student, I need to take classes that like professors who are experts in like anthropology, sociology, and philosophy. So I can like put everything all together because that's what makes politics work too, as well, and effective and inclusiveness. And so I think just be aware of what you're teaching and be knowledgeable, and also be willing to learn from your students of color as well. If they feel like, oh, that doesn't represent us, whatever you are teaching doesn't speak to the what I'm feeling. Even if you're saying Asian Americans, I myself don't associate with that part of Asian American because I'm a low income Asian American, and also I'm Hmong, and I'm not East Asian, I'm Southeast Asian. So just be aware of the different identities, and through that, just be willing to learn as well, I'd say, in that sense. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Thank you. And I would definitely like to elaborate. I think someone said it before, but there is so much racial trauma that we as people of color experience. So when you're in a classroom as a professor, right, and you're speaking about race, and there's only one or two people of color in that classroom, specifically, well, students of color, be mindful and be aware of that, right? So when you're asking folks to partake in these discussions and these open dialogues and having these conversations, there's so much racial trauma that we are battling as well. And it's awkward and it's uncomfortable. So making sure that you're just being mindful, okay, I'm gonna have this conversation on race, but I already know there's only 2 students of color in my classroom. How can I transition, right? How can I go about that differently? Maybe I can do an activity, like someone said, to call in more white folks. So it could be a conversation that's holistic versus having to put the emotional labor on Black and brown people, and being aware that being Black or brown, there's already so much emotional labor that we're carrying anyways. So thank you all for answering that question. It's a question I was definitely excited about. 2 of those questions specifically with admissions, because that's something my students of color tell me all the time, that they feel as if admissions just kind of just brought them here and just kind of left them hanging as a person of color, because the community isn't inclusive, nor the campus community. And that makes it very, very hard for people of color to navigate, especially when you're a student and you're just trying to find your identity on a college campus. So thank you, Chris, for letting me sneak that in. I appreciate you. Are you here, Chris? I'm all set. I'm done with my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for attending the event. We are a little bit over, but thank you for your attention. Thank you for the great questions. And thank you for the students. Please, if people can write in the chat, please write your kudos and thank you for the students, because you all were amazing. I really do appreciate your honesty. You will help us become the institution that we know we can be. I mean, really, I do appreciate that. So as I mentioned, what we're going to be doing is this is recorded. So we will be sharing this with people who signed up. So if there are folks who weren't able to make it, you can share that. I don't know exactly, Carrie or Ian will help me figure out what that looks like, but we will be allowing people to like watch it so they can get it. And again, the Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion will be, members will be following up with different departments to talk about, you know, what is it that we can do as particular departments to help, to make a difference, to be more racially aware, to actually act upon, because as this said, it was listening and acting upon the voices of ALANA students, and that's really what we want to do. So thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Hmm.